Hello, everyone, and welcome to Seriously Loco, the Seriously Crazy fan podcast for El Paso Locomotive FC. I am your host, Phil Bakke. I am joined tonight by my co-hosts. We've got Mika Burrell. Mika, how's the weekend been? I mean, Friday games, a little bit strange, but it almost feels like it extends the weekend a little bit, especially when Locomotive pull off the win.
I was just talking about this with someone that, like, it's kind of nice because then you can enjoy the rest of your weekend. I mean, I still had a nail biter this morning with Arsenal versus Newcastle, but it was nice for Locomotive to get 3 points in kind of at the end of the day, kind of like a chaotic way, but can't complain. What is that now? Is that 5 unbeaten? 4 straight wins, something like that?
I think it's 6 unbeaten in the league and 4 straight wins.
Got it.
Yes.
So, I mean, in form, can't complain.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We're joined as well by Christian Canales. Christian, like we said, chaotic win, but a win nonetheless.
Yeah, for sure. I think we all took dubs this weekend. Liverpool got a win. Wolves with a win. Been Gladbach with a win. Betis didn't play, so that's all. It's a blessing, right?
Sometimes, yeah. That means no. You can't possibly get a red card if you don't play. So.
Yeah, Betis just on that disciplinary kick right now, but no. Yeah, good weekend of footy overall, and capped things off. I know I'll upset a few Seriously Loco fans with this one, but big weekend capped off with a Manchester United loss at the London Stadium to West Ham. So villains in Ted Lasso, heroes in my heart. West Ham United and David Moyes getting the job done to keep the slimmest hopes of Liverpool's Champions League qualification alive. But yeah, all in all, about as good of a weekend of football as we could ask for. As most of you know, but if you're new around here or are finding us for the first time, we are Seriously Loco. We talk about all things El Paso Locomotive. You can find us on all of the major podcast platforms. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram. You can find us on YouTube, Twitch, etc. We had a watch along. Christian, we had a little bit of fun, a little bit of anxiety watching Locomotive close this one out in Colorado Springs. But always a good time watching along, and a little bit, therapeutic in the sense that being able to watch with the chat and experience the emotions with other Locomotive fans for away games always makes it a little bit easier to take. But yeah, so subscribe to us or follow whatever on your platform of choice. We're also on Patreon, which I can say I have put fingers to keys on the start of the Tactical Takeaways article for this last one. So the chances of it hitting publication are much higher than in these previous weeks, but yeah, so check out our Patreon as well. And with all that being said, we've got a big episode ahead. Obviously, we'll break down every aspect of Locomotive's win in Colorado Springs. The fact that the first half was amazing for most of it, and then the fact that the second half was kind of dire, and we'll talk about all of the different aspects of that, and then we'll also talk about a preview of Loudoun United and their visit to the SWUP coming up this weekend. So lots on tap for you, but first we're going to kick it off as we always do with Christian's question. Christian, take it away.
So I've got food on the way right now to be ready once we're done recording. So my question today is, what is your go-to Chinese order? Chinese takeout?
That's tough. Well, I guess I should start by saying, like, I'm actually not, like, big on Chinese takeout. Like it's probably like the last thing that I would go for. Not that I don't like it, it's just I like other things more.
Interesting.
But I mean, you can't go wrong with like some crab rangoons to start. Like those are undefeated. But
the way crab rangoon has like taken over the culture is really funny to me. Like just the fact that like white people love crab rangoon.
Well, I mean, it's good.
It is very good.
But I'm pretty basic. Like I like a cheeky General Tso's chicken, like a staple, I think. Probably, yeah, if I don't know what I want, I'm just going to get that, to be honest.
That's I'm kind of in the same boat. Like there is something about like a sesame chicken as a comfort food, with just a fried rice and sesame chicken. Like I will house like pounds of sesame chicken if allowed. I certainly prefer, if I'm gonna like, I'd love to go out there and be more authentic and all those things. But when it comes to Chinese takeout, like, and I'm just feeling like I want something comforting, like sesame chicken is the go-to of like just something that you can just destroy.
Well, and now as adults, we know that MSG is not the devil. It's actually like a good thing to use when cooking.
It's like mandatory for cooking.
Yeah.
Because it was like a whole conspiracy as kids that it's like going to give you cancer or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's fine, like in moderation, as most things.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm a fan of a good lo mein.
Okay. Noodles.
A good lo mein noodles, yeah. Lo mein beef.
Do you have Chinese on the way?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I have Panda Express on the way.
Okay, Chinese.
It's like
Chinese adjacent.
It's like even less authentic than Chinese takeout.
Chinese inspired.
Yeah.
It's the LaCroix of Chinese food. Of like there is an essence of Chinese food.
It's what Chipotle is to Mexican.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a quote from a show. I can't remember what show it is, but I always remember it. And there's this group, and they're putting together like a team for nonsense, and they're giving each other like code names. And she looks at this one dude who I think is maybe some sort of Filipino. I don't know. He's not Chinese, but she's like, and your code name is Panda Express. And he's like, but I'm not Chinese. And she's like, neither's the food at Panda Express.
Oh man, that's great.
That's funny. Yeah, no, I respect all of those. I think the lo mein, that was a classic growing up too. That was a go-to for us in my parents' house. But you've succeeded in making me hungry, Christian. So that's
for real. This man's gonna be eating lo mein in our face during the preview.
Yeah. I won't. I'll be gracious.
This is like one of the biggest struggles of being in Eastern time is the fact that like I'll talk to you guys and you'll be like, oh man, I'm putting in like a cheeky wings order or something like that. And it'll be 11 p.m. and me being like, do I order food? Like that's like, is my stomach on mountain time? Cause it certainly feels like it. But no, I respect those. And diving in. So I guess diving straight in with the recap of what went down in Colorado Springs, guys. The Seriously Loco match review. I said in the outline, like, don't sweat the Switchbacks because, we've only ever lost once to them and undefeated at Widener Field. I think the spoiler alert here is that, and in terms of, in general terms, is Locomotive definitely sweat. We were definitely sweating this result, but getting 3 points away in Colorado Springs just feels like well, any 3 points on the road feels like icing on the cake.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about this last week with San Diego Loyal. Is like we're not used to getting results like this on the road and getting things over the line, because I think in this one we came under the proverbial cosh, and it could have been ugly if Colorado Springs had finished better, I guess. But yeah, I can't knock the effort. 2 games on the road in a row and 2 wins against, the top of the class in the Western Conference. So, which now that is actually like us. I think we're second, right? So, obviously, no, we dropped back down to 4th, because of the other results. But I mean, still,
yeah,
starting to creep our way up there, and I think we're the most informed team in the league, actually, like across both conferences. So.
Yeah.
You take that all day.
Yeah, I mean, Christian, obviously traveling at all historically has been a little bit of a dicey situation for Locomotive, but it feels like there's something about this team that handles the pressure well and reacts well on the road.
Yeah, I think Brian just does a great job of getting them locked in. And that's what you need when you're on the road is just that focus. It's not always, about even being the better team, just making sure that you make the least amount of mistakes. And I guess you can say that about any match, honestly, but you're just so much more prone to those mistakes if you're on the road. So it's even more important to stay focused. And I think Brian does a great job of making sure the team understands what the situation is before they head out into the field.
Well, that leads us right into one of the listener questions we got tonight. And it's from @FernieElias on Twitter. He just said, is it just me or is the team coming around to Brian's methods? Have they bought into the system? I mean, because it just, the proof's in the pudding and the results speak for themselves. But I guess the manner in which they're getting results are different too, so it feels like the coach is having quite an impact.
Yeah, it's funny to ask about the system, because I think if you ask this question during the Hutchinson era or certainly during the Lowry era, that's an easy concept to imagine in your mind when we say system, whereas like you said, Phil, with Brian, it's more of overarching philosophy than a formation or positions, right? The philosophy is control, and we've said that over and over again. Have they bought into it? I think so. I think actually, though, if you ask Brian, he would probably agree that there's still work to be done, because I do think that there's a tendency in this Locomotive side to maybe let teams back into games that they have no business being back in. So they've bought into it, but I think the execution still, it still needs to improve. And, we're still at the very beginning of what's hopefully a long and fruitful season and tenure for Brian Clairhout, of course. So I think we have to keep that in mind too. So.
Yeah, I think, like Mika said, Brian's philosophy is control and by any means, because control can look like a lot of things, and I don't think Brian defines that as one thing, not having the ball or, only, getting the quick counter every single time. He's very flexible as to what control means, and like we'll talk about, I don't think this was a good game for that. We got the result, but this was not Brian's way. This is not the way that he would want to win, I think, because I do think that we lacked control for a lot of this one.
Yeah, and that's completely fair. I mean, I think as you guys said, I think the system, I think they've bought into the fact that Brian is able to game plan well, and they've embraced their roles. I think we also saw in this one, and maybe in the post match talk that obviously like hit social media and all that stuff, I think we saw the fact that there are costs to the way that Brian has done business in terms of sticking with a really consistent 11. And where maybe some managers would look for maybe more rotation or more opportunities for people from the start. Brian's opted for consistency in terms of the personnel, maybe not in terms of how they're actually utilized, but the lineup has picked itself for the last 6 games in the league. Anyways, it basically has gone unchanged since that win in Louisville. And that being said, like there are costs to that, and one of the things that we continue to harp on is the depth of this squad and whether like we have the right pieces to be able to extend this run as much as possible. So I guess like the interesting thing is not necessarily like has everybody bought in, but it's like, do we have all of the pieces necessary and have the guys who are on the outside of that 11 looking in, have they bought in to being like the role player that they are seemingly being kind of relegated to? not no disrespect to any of the players, just saying like that is a tough thing to accept if you're saying like, hey, this is the 11 we're going to play week in and week out. Those guys on the outside of that, and in particular, the goal scorer Manny, Josue Aron Gomez, some pretty influential players and talented players, maybe on the outside looking in of the system. So maybe the better question is like, have we gotten buy-in like all the way through that some of these guys are going to have to make an impact off the bench?
Yeah, it's hard because, I mean, like you said, since Louisville, the 11's been more or less picking itself. And I think there is a danger of complacency in individuals. And I think we saw that, and I think we'll get into that. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're being a little bit down on the club, even though, like, we won and we're on this great run of form. But I do think that there are, like, ways that we can be exposed that it just means that Colorado just weren't very lucky or they didn't finish very well. But yeah, I mean, there is good news though, right? I mean, the first half was superb. It's just how we ended, the whole like
Sure.
start the way you mean to go on. That didn't happen, but the way we started was quite good.
Yeah. I mean, Christian, I know you weren't able to join the watch along for the first half, but the first half, watching this one back, like the first half, we can say it was pretty stark in terms of first half to second half. The first half of this one, chances and quality play all the way around, limiting Colorado. This was a very complete away performance in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't have been a game after halftime, honestly. It's very well could have been 4-0 with the chances that we got. So it was a fantastic half. Maybe the best first half we've had all year. And we've done a pretty good job the last couple of weeks of coming out strong, but I think this was the best example of that we've seen so far.
It was interesting, Mika, in the way it was put together in that first half we see, and one of the things that terrorized Colorado Springs is we saw Petar Petrovic and Dennis Kostishin occupy, I would say, like more traditional areas on the wings and really stretch the play. And Petar in particular absolutely ate out on that left wing. And I mean, you can see it in the chance that he creates, the chance he's presented with early on, which forces a save out of Herrera in goal for Switchbacks. But the goal he sets up, the opener for Lucho, it felt like a winger's winger's goal in many respects, because he skins his fullback and just squares it for Lucho to tap in.
I want to go back even further than that in the move, because you see him at the top of your screen immediately start to sprint in a straight line down that left wing when the ball is collected in the middle of the park. I think, is it by Lucho or Calvillo? I can't remember. Or actually maybe Zaka. I don't know. There was a lot of dropping off in this
interchange.
game. Yeah. And so he immediately starts that sprint. And I mean, that's the game sense that we've been talking about with Petar, is, you know, the instinct to pounce in Louisville, and you know, just the same thing, the same kind of run that he has for his first goal at home that Kostichin sets up from the center back position. I mean, this one, like, this happens so quickly, but at the same time, like, the move is like a lot more complex than just when he squares it to Lucho. And then Lucho, I mean, that you love that if you're a striker, of him just putting it right in your path. You just use the pace on the ball and it's going into the roof of the net, and Herrera can do nothing about it. Which, by the way, I thought Herrera was probably, him and maybe Enriquez were Colorado Springs' best players, and Herrera was furious with his back line. Musa didn't really cover himself in glory. Lacroix, Segrist, and to an extent Ockford, like, they all had struggles in that first half. But yeah, I mean, Petrovic, just his fingerprints all over this first half, because then he gets his goal too. So
I joked in commentary, I guess, during that first half, that Petrovic puts Ockford in carbonite like Han Solo, just freezes that dude out on the he just stops running, like, during Petrovic's dribble. I think the width provided by those two players, we've seen Kostichin take up a lot of different sorts of positions. He's dropped deeper. He's let Lions bomb on. He's cut in field, which we did see a fair bit of in this game. But in this one, Petrovic, on the other hand, we talked about his, like, maybe lack of influence in the last match. Was it? Oh, San Diego, too.
San Diego, yeah.
San Diego, Pittsburgh, OC, like, maybe a little less influence in terms of how, like, he was adding to the buildup. And I think this game, they particularly saw Petar as that outlet because of the way that Switchbacks use their fullbacks in attack, like the way that the matchups one-on-one. I think they liked Petrovic v. Ockford, and it proved to be effective in that first half. The second goal not coming long after, and it is one of those moves that goes from one wing to the other, in that it is Lyons is involved, Kostichin's involved, both strikers are involved, and it ends up at the feet of Petar Petrovic, who, really simple finish in the end, Christian, but one of those moves and one of those goals that, similar to how Lokomotiv have maybe put together some nice team moves over the last couple of weeks, it was one of those that is not it's not by chance that Petrovic gets a look like that. It's all from the hard work of everyone in the build-up.
Yeah, that ball just kept moving, and it like you said, it just creates a really good opportunity for Petar to put it away. Just wish it would have been just a little bit, like the finish would have been just a little bit, I don't know, more flashy, so he could get go for the three-peat goal of the week here.
There are probably a couple of passes in this one. Well, I mean, and Mika, in the build up to that goal, obviously, just the way this team links up, and maybe the nature of the goal scored, it kind of got me thinking that some of the goals that Lokomotiv are scoring, and whether it's the tap in, the tap in maybe feels a little bit more like a Lokomotiv goal when you look across the five seasons, like getting to the byline and squaring for someone. The second goal feels like the sort of goal that Lokomotiv, like, I don't want to say weren't capable of, but just didn't score with any sort of frequency, and that is like a lot of passes, a lot of players involved, and eventually like a good, just like clinical finish in the end. This isn't like maybe the sort of goal that Lokomotiv score in the past.
Yeah, I think that's a consequence of having more decisive players. I mean, this is very similar to Kostichin's goal against San Diego Loyal, and the one touch, the verticality, Lucho Soloniak being absolutely brilliant. I mean, in this one, he makes this diagonal run that completely takes Lacroix with him, and then the gap starts to open, and Ricky Zacarias is really smart to then make the opposite run. Lucho lays it off, and then it's right into the path of Petar, who, like I said, is decisive. And I think we've had less composed players in those positions in the past. And I think you're just seeing a, different gravy with the likes of Petrovic, Kostichin. I mean, Petrovic, this is a player that came out of the Malmo Academy, and everyone thought that he would be, looked at by Champions League level clubs. Wasn't until he got that ACL injury that his career really, it was a huge setback, and it's hard to come back from that. But, he was thought of as someone that had a really huge future. Obviously, he came from a big club that has produced a lot of superstars over the years. And, I'm starting to think that, this could be a purple patch. We don't know. But just based on his movement and the way that he carries himself on the pitch, like, he does seem like he is the kind of player that, like, if healthy, is probably a level above.
Yeah.
What he's, USL Championship, with all due respect. But yeah, great finish, side foot right into the corner. Herrera can do nothing about it. His defense is all over the place because the movement is just so confusing to them and fluid. And shout out Zacarias, because this is where he's having his like moment of like really good false nine play in that first half. And I think it kind of goes downhill from here for him. But sure. This might be like his position. We've tried him as, kind of an out and out forward. We've tried him on the wing, but like dropping off to make that space, he seems to be very, very good at that. And it takes a little bit of pressure off him too, because he doesn't have to be the guy necessarily on the end of it, but can use his strength and, push guys off as he starts to like drop back into that pocket and then play it off. And so just a really good move all the way around. And we're 2-0 up in, 13 minutes. So
I was thinking too, in this half, we saw obviously the qualities of Petrovic. One of the other things that comes out in this half is the vision and the passing qualities of Denis Kostichin. We've seen him make unbelievable passes from deeper areas, as we mentioned with the Petrovic goal of the week a couple of weeks ago. In this one, a little bit different in where he's playing the passes from, a little bit different in where those passes are going. But both Lucho and Zacarias kind of sitting on the back shoulder of the last defender, and Kostichin seeing this curled ball in behind, almost like a reverse ball, if that makes sense, in the sense that like he kind of shapes like he's going to play a big switch all the way to the left-hand side. He's on the right wing playing it out to the left wing, but then the pass he actually makes is a flatter pass, like in behind, and twice he puts in this first half, he puts first Lucho and then Ricky, Zaka through on goal. And it was just like, it was interesting for a number of reasons. Number one is that Kostichin obviously has been a super influential player in the side. Second is that we're seeing him create and we're seeing him produce from different areas on the pitch. And we've talked about like the versatility there, but Kostishin in this one, maybe a little unlucky not to come away with a couple of assists from again a very different sort of pass from what he was coming up with the last time he provided an assist for Petrovic.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's more of that like hockey assist provider in this game, I guess. And I think he's one of those players that I don't know that he's too like obsessed with his own stats. He's very much, he strikes me as a team player. But at the same time, like he's hungry to contribute. I think for better or for worse, you see that in his shot selection. He loves a shot from outside the box, and it's not always the best decision, which is funny then when you think about his passing, which is superb. Yeah. So, I mean, usually it's the other way around. Like, people can't really pick good passes, but he's just a very, very talented player and someone who, I mean, I think he leads the league in shots still. Something like that.
It's insane.
On top of being, you know, our chief creator, it just shows you how impactful he is, and how, you know, maybe the game got away from us a little bit once he was subbed.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, you talked about the shot selection, but Christian, there was a shot in this one where Kostishin pulls up from about 40 and just has a dink with his left foot, which it was one of those where you're like, as he's shaping to shoot, you're like, yeah, this is probably an easy catch for the keeper. And it had Herrera sprawling. That thing was moving towards the top corner.
Yeah, he probably averages like one of those. Like, he takes a couple of those crazy shots, but on average, I think at least one of those every game has a pretty good chance of going in. And you know, there is a universe out there where Kostishin is leading the Golden Boot race with like 8 goals right now, all bangers.
Yeah.
But the day one of those goes in, man, he's gonna absolutely lose his mind. He's a very passionate guy, and so I can't wait for that.
Yeah, I absolutely. I mean, I think it's fair to say like Kostishin, strictly from his energy, is a value add to the team, but his quality is shining through, and I think a little unlucky not to come away with a couple assists in this game. The one for Lucho actually tries to do a cheeky like outside of his right boot slid finish, like past Herrera, who was kind of smart to it, and then Zaka tries to go past him, and he does really well to not get beat by the move from Ricardo. But all that being said, I mean, so first half, Lokomotiv 2-0 up at halftime, relatively comfortable. I will say there are a couple of chances in there, Skundrich in particular, like couple of headers that I think like in a different universe, like if he does better with those headers, it is a little bit more of a game. And there were the warning signs, I guess, of what is to come. But Mika, we've talked about like how well Brian responds to stuff going on in the game, and we, you know, it seems like we make good adjustments. It seems like we analyze really well. Lokomotiv come out for the second half up 2-0, and we're just under pressure for, I mean, a bulk of the next 45, but certainly for the first 20 minutes of the second half, it was like all hands on deck, because Colorado Springs were camped in Lokomotiv's half all of a sudden.
Well, it seemed like they remembered that they can press. Colorado Springs press was all of a sudden like extremely organized, coordinated. I mean, they were putting a lot of pressure on us, and I think I just said that maybe the game got away from us when Denis Kostishin goes off, but I think he's also pulled off for precisely that reason, because he was getting knocked off the ball quite a bit, seemed to be the press trigger, which, I mean, I guess in retrospect, you probably figure that because he's probably our best player, our most influential player in Colorado, know that.
Yeah.
So they want to put the pressure on him first and foremost, and he loses the ball a couple times, and then not that long thereafter he's pulled off. Petr Petrovic's influence as well. Like he's not someone who's going to, or that you would expect anyway, to really like defend all that well. We're looking for him to do some magic in the final third. So in that way, the subs made sense because we were under a lot of pressure. And I've complimented Manny Sanupe on this podcast before about how I think, even though we probably want to see what he can do in the final third, which of course we'll get onto, he has come on to kind of like shore up the wide areas. And I think he did that when he came on. I think Josue Aron Gomez helped the ball stick a little more, but even with those changes, like it wasn't that much of an improvement. Like Colorado Springs were really, really trying to get back into this game. And is it Romario Williams who has a shot? He peels off the shoulder of Yuma at one point, and it's just like a gap that like any competent side should never let open up, to be honest. And with better finishing, we'd be in trouble there. He later gets rewarded with the penalty, but I mean, the second half, I mean, it's the old cliche, tale of two halves. We were lucky in a lot of ways to not concede more than we did, because Colorado were definitely trying to get back into it and to try and win it. I mean, they're at home. They just come off some big results on the road. Their fans are in the house. They really wanted this, and they looked like the better team for most of that second half.
Yeah, Mika saying we were lucky, and it's like a hard agree there. And honestly, for the second week in a row, because with better finishing, we could have lost last week against San Diego, and we very well could have lost this match against Colorado. So I obviously I want to celebrate the wins and stuff with the team too, but I think that it's important to realize that we were very, very close through really, and won not by our own hand, but by San Diego not being able to finish a chance to save their lives, and Colorado missing a few good ones here too. So I think that's important to bring back home and get things settled down when we face Loudoun this weekend too, because it could have been a whole different story 2 weeks in a row. This streak is wonderful, but it almost was not.
Yeah, to talk about this half, and I guess to talk specifically, so right before the hour mark in this one, we do see Petrovic and Kostishin, a double substitution for Sanupe and Josue Aron Gomez, which I think caught a couple of people by surprise. But at Nico11 on Twitter asks, could you put the Patara/Dennis double sub down to minute management? If so, do you think we'll start seeing more rotation in the squad? I mean, this felt, Mika, to your point, I think we've answered a little bit in that it does feel like an attempt by Brian to insert a little bit more energy, a little bit more maybe work rate. And that's not criticism of the players who came off, just strictly like energy wise, at altitude, all those things. Adding in some fresh legs who could do some defensive work. But there is a price to pay with the Kostishin sub, as it does feel like we lose a little bit of, maybe you lose an opportunity in adding additional control, like having Kostishin's passing range in those moments, and press resistance and ability to win fouls. Like I think that's maybe part of the question mark here. Is Kostishin obviously is one of those players who typically is quite adept at relieving pressure, in the sense that like he gets kicked and as a result like does relieve a little bit of pressure. Gomez takes that mantle on, but do you think that this sort of sub suggests that Locomotive are going to be rotating more in the future, or do you think it was simply like, hey, it's a tough night in Colorado at altitude, even compared to El Paso, and as a result, like we're adding fresh legs, like versus and maybe focusing on like who's the fittest versus like any sort of like technical aspect.
I think it's probably a bit of both, with I mean a slight leaning towards a tactical change, which sounds crazy because I mean, like you said, Kostichin's like so influential for us, and Petr Petrovic had 2 goal involvements at that point. But it feels like Brian likes to make changes as soon as he feels the other team is getting the advantage. And that's almost always around like 55, 60 minutes. It just so happens. Because, that's how every football game is all over every league, every world. There will be phases of play where one team's better than the other, except when you're playing Manchester City. But we won't go down that rabbit hole. But I think that is the thing, is Brian really wants to like arrest any slide before it's like fatal. And I think with Kostichin, like I said, he was losing the ball quite a bit in the second half, not having like the time to turn or to take that second touch that he's used to or that he can make for himself. Like I said, Petar, like not really like a defensive stalwart by any means. So I do think that the changes were more practical than anything. Then again, you see Ricardo Zacarias go pretty much 90 minutes, and it begs the question, like, why? Because he absolutely started to struggle, especially after he misses his big chance.
Yeah, I mean, and Christian, I mean, we kind of talked about it at the time, and it's not to dig out the player necessarily, but we were a little bit shocked when the Gomez sub did go for Kostichin, like rather than Zacharias, and his involvement as we start to talk about Colorado Springs and their resurgence in this match. Like, unfortunately, Zacharias like does contribute to the way that Colorado Springs like were able to gain a foothold.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like don't feel bad about saying it because it's been so consistent this season where like he has like 55 really good minutes in him and then he drops off really quickly.
Sure.
And so I think it's been the last couple of games, or at least that's what it feels like, where he's just been staying on longer than I personally would like to have him on there. And to me, it just seems like he becomes a liability at a certain point. So yeah, I think that I would regularly like to see him off earlier, because he does a ton for us, in the first half and beginning the second half, but it just drops off so quick, and it's concerning when you have a team like Colorado in this match that just kept fighting, and just we had our backs against the wall for so much.
Yeah, it is it's a long second half in many ways, and I think for Zacharias in this one, it was one of those where it felt like, oh, natural substitution, like Gomez is coming on, I'm assuming it's for him, and then it ends up being for Dennis, which, fair enough, I understand, like maybe some of the press resistance, but you almost think like maybe the introduction of Gomez kind of naturally takes some of the pressure off of Dennis, in that, like, if he comes on for Zacharias, Dennis has like that kind of first pass in front of him at all times, and someone that the ball will stick to maybe a little bit more. But yeah, a little bit of a tough, definitely a tough start to the second half, and right on the hour mark, like as these changes have been made and assignments have changed and all that stuff, Jimmy Ockford kind of ghosts in, and I mean unmarked scores from a set piece. And we've talked about some of Locomotive's set piece defending this year, Mika, but and how we don't feel super comfortable about it. We haven't been punished that much by it, and in this case it was like all too easy for Colorado Springs to get on the board and really put us under threat.
Who was it that scored the first, or yeah, the first one for them? I forget.
Ockford,
yeah. I mean, the set piece defending, like how much more can we say about it? First of all, he's in the territory of like Yuma, a mismatch, like period, a mismatch. Yuma doesn't have the support there, and it's just an easy header for him. And I don't know what needs to be done. I think coaching set pieces and set piece defending is like very specialized. I won't pretend to know the ins and outs, but like it's got to improve, because this is like a lot of team in USL Championships bread and butter, set pieces and corners. And so, yeah, Oxford gets them back into the game with the header. And we're able to get one more from Manny Sinupe, which is the bright spot of this second half, because we've talked at length about how we want to see more of Manny Sinupe, and we want him to be more involved and like happy here at the club and scoring goals in what's been like a tough, relatively tough kind of period for him at the club. The turn is amazing. He gets a little lucky with the deflection, but the reaction from his teammates says it all. So I'm glad we were able to at least answer the Oxford thing, but like, yeah, that's the one bright spot in this second half is Emmanuel.
Yeah, Christian, like Mika said, like the reaction of everybody, it's Manny's reaction to scoring. There is a level of emotion in his celebration, but the fact that so much of the team like ran over to him, it's one of those things where it's like, we know that Manny is a super high quality player. Like we've seen these like glimpses from him, and it has just been like frustrating in the sense that he's had some struggles with injury. He obviously was involved in the team at the beginning of the season, and then like as Petrovic has been introduced to the side, his minutes have dwindled. But that moment, scoring that third goal for Lokomotiv at a time when Lokomotiv was super under pressure, a key goal, but also, a key goal for him personally. There was just like something different about that goal emotionally for Lokomotiv and for Sinupe in particular.
Yeah, and you can tell, you could see it on his face, and after the fact, with some of the locker room footage the club releases after, you can tell that it has been I don't know if a rough season for him is the right word, but he hasn't played, and when you're a professional football, that's what you want to do. You want to play, and to be able to just keep yourself in it mentally and be able to, answer when called upon is just such a huge part, a huge role to fill, and I think a really great quality. And I think it just speaks a lot to who Manny is as a professional, and to Brian for not hesitating to throw him in there and say, okay, like, you haven't played, but I still have expectations of you, and you need to go out there and take care of business, and he did.
Yeah. No, such a great moment for him and for the team. I think like, we've talked to Manny, really rate him as a player, and also he's just a good dude. And it's always nice to see someone like that overcome some of the tough things that he's faced this year, and just seeing the way that the team responded as well. It's clear that he's endeared himself to the group, and just one of those moments that you can't help but feel positive about, in addition to the fact that it ends up being decisive, because as things were winding down in this one, Lokomotiv, in an effort to continue to make things interesting, Yuma concedes a penalty for a I guess going through the back of I actually can't remember who it is who gets fouled from switchbacks, but
Is it Skundrich?
I think it is Skundrich. So Yuma gets penalized for going through the back, and I guess the first question is for you guys, like, is it a penalty to begin with? And because overall, like, this felt like a fairly refereed game in the sense that, like, I didn't have too many complaints about how it was officiated in the course of play. But is this a penalty for you guys? And then obviously, you know, seeing the penalty and all of the, you know, the fact that it does make it 3-2 and eventually, like, Locomotive do go on to win, but the impact, I guess, in that moment and maybe just in general, Locomotive maybe not being quite as comfortable in those closing moments because of the reduction of their lead. But is it a pen for you?
It is a penalty, but it's soft and it's clever by the Colorado Springs player because he sees Yuma behind him, takes a look back, bends over, anticipates the contact, it goes down. I mean, literally, that's what happened. Not trying to give any innuendo or anything, but it's clever from the Colorado Springs man, and I mean, I don't think that the referee has really any choice, because he's right there. He's pretty well positioned for what I remember, and I would tend to agree with you that it's the referee by and large had a good game. So it is a penalty, but it's just like it's soft and it's bought in a lot of ways. But I would want that. I would want that penalty. That's what I always try to think of is like, if that was happening to Locomotive, what would I think? And I would want that penalty to be called for us. So.
Yeah, I mean, if you heard my thoughts during the stream, Phil, I thought it was nailed on. You know, soft or not, it's like needless contact. So just, I don't know. I can't argue it. You know, it's a really dumb decision. So for me, you know, when if it's questionable, but it was like useless, then or not useless, but like pointless. And then I don't get upset about it because, I mean, don't put yourself in a bad situation and you won't have to deal with those shitty consequences.
Yeah, it's especially weird given the fact that, like, what is Skundrich going to do? Like, is he going to spin and shoot? Like, probably not, you know? And you know, that's just that. I think it's one of those that for me, you know, in the moment it felt soft, particularly because when you watch it back, you see, and even probably in real time, like, you see exactly what Skundrich is doing, and that's where the doubt creeps in of, like, is it so bought that it's not a penalty? You know what I mean? Like, is it so like premeditated that it shouldn't be a penalty? But at the same time, I think the threshold essentially becomes, and obviously acknowledging that, you know, USL doesn't have VAR, but as a threshold for fans deciding whether or not something is like a good or bad decision, for me, it's one of those that, like, if there were VAR, it wouldn't have been overturned, right? Like, they wouldn't, absolutely. They wouldn't have overturned it. If he doesn't give it, it's not given in VAR if he doesn't give it, but it's not overturned if he does.
Right.
And so for that, like, I understand why he gives the penalty, and I understand, like, the rationale for it. I think, like you guys have already said, like, I think it is extremely soft, and I can kind of understand why Yuma is, like, sort of confused by, like, the decision, because it's just not, like, I don't know. I get both sides in that it feels like it's super duper soft, and if the guy in front of me just kind of, like, falls over, like, I could be a little bit miffed that someone gave a penalty against me, but at the same time, it's one of those that like it wouldn't, even with VAR, it doesn't get overturned. Because it's not like there wasn't contact, like there absolutely was. I think Skundrich is looking for it and clever, as you said, Mika, in the way that he goes about it. They get the penalty. It ends up not mattering in the grand scheme of things. And I guess like we're left with, at the end of this one, kind of the main question, which is like, at the end of the day, very good first half, very poor second half in many ways. And the ultimate question is like, is 3 points 3 points? And can Locomotive just, you know what, put these on the board and move on to the next one? Or are there broader concerns that you guys like come out of this match with?
You'll hear from the players and from Brian that like 3 points are 3 points, but I think if they were, I think the conversations in the locker room and on the training pitch are like, it's not good enough that we're letting teams back into it when we have already stamped our authority on the game early. And I understand that that's hard to do. It's hard to sustain that level over 90 minutes, but we can definitely get closer to 90 minutes of sustained control than we did in this one. So, yes, you take the 3 points. That's what matters at the end of the day. But there's definitely, like, cracks here. There's things that can be improved. Colorado edged us in XG in this one. Again, like, better finishing from, like, the likes of Skundrich, Romario, Williams, Wheeler, the like gigantor that comes on at the end there. If he had put away some of the chances or at least got himself involved a little bit, maybe it's a different game. But yeah, you do kind of have to take the result, but like keeping in mind like there are things that can be improved, because on another day like this goes completely pear-shaped. And that's just, I think that's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah, I mean, the defense needs to clamp down a little bit is what it comes down to, because every good season involves like an amount of luck, but I would prefer not to use all that up like in April and May. So just tighten up a little bit is all I would ask for at this point, because I think everything else is going smoothly at this point.
No, that's fair enough. I think the question mark, I guess, you know, for me coming out of this one is we've now seen in a couple of games, and you know these are not unique, but I would say this one and probably San Diego, yeah, definitely San Diego and definitely not Orange County, but Tulsa. Wide players for opposition teams really having a say in like how things play out, and luckily Locomotive have been able to withstand those things and be able to not, you know, I guess succumb in a more meaningful way to to what's gone on. But I think of Marcus Epps' influence on the late stages of that draw in Tulsa. Moshe Bani's like influence in San Diego, and the fact that like there were a couple of big chances created from the wide left area, and then again, you know, on Friday night with Deshane Beckford like popping up in these dangerous areas. And obviously, you know, Beckford doesn't get on the score sheet or anything like that, but a lot of what Colorado Springs were able to do offensively was going through like those, you know, Deshane Beckford just being in space and having time to do stuff. So I do think like how we defend in those wide areas like is a question mark for Locomotive still, despite the fact that, you know, we've got this great run of results, and I'm certainly not taking it for granted. But there is a little bit there in that I feel like we we just feel the most under pressure when we let these guys from wide start to dictate play and like hurt us a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
So all that being said, Locomotive do escape. And it did feel like a bit of an escape in some ways, with the 3 points in Colorado Springs. It has to be said, it is a good result. It's propelled Locomotive, as you guys talked about, further up the table. They are technically fourth as it stands in the Western Conference now, after San Antonio did confirm a win over. Or wait, did they win tonight? Yeah, they beat.
They get it one.
They beat Vegas. So, but with that being said, they are like part of this kind of, I don't know if you can even call it stratification, but there's kind of a top 5 developing in the Western Conference of Sacramento, San Diego, San Antonio, El Paso, and Colorado Springs, which feels like an important group to be a part of. That's not to say that things won't change over the coming weeks, but it does feel important that they're in that discussion in the top half of the West. Nature of the win obviously matters, but when you're on the road in USL, it often feels like wins on the road come at a premium, and this Locomotive side, like we said at the top of the show, has found a way more often than not on the road. So Locomotive heading into next week with, like we said, that 4th place on 16 points, level with San Antonio on goal difference as well, on points and goal difference, and then Loyal and Sac Republic above them. But lots to look forward to for Locomotive, I think it's safe to say. And one of the things we'll look forward to is Loudoun United's trip to Southwest University Park next weekend, and we'll take a look at that match after a quick break. The Seriously Loco match preview. Welcome back to Seriously Loco, everyone. Guys, I mean, we've got Loudoun United at Southwest University Park. Obviously, nice to be back in the friendly confines, but a Loudoun United side that is not the Loudoun of old. I think, Christian, we talked on stream.
Not your father's Loudoun United.
Not your father's Loudoun. I mean, Christian, we talked on the stream about the fact that like there are no easy matches essentially in USL this year, and Loudoun United no slouches, but having to make that cross country trip obviously tough for an Eastern Conference team. So, what do we make of Loudoun ahead of their visit to the SWAT?
Yeah, I mean, they have taken a dip over the last couple of weeks. Some might argue unfairly with yesterday's match. I don't know if I know you caught it, Phil. I don't know if Mika caught it. They were robbed of a goal there, so they're going to be coming in angry, which is unfortunate for us. But they do have an Open Cup match on Wednesday too. So again, those things going in our favor. You know, that's why we choose to not compete in the Open Cup. But yeah, I think that, you know, it's a match that does have to be taken seriously because they can score. You know, they've got 11 goals in 8 matches so far, so they can put the ball in the back of the net, but nothing that can't be dealt with.
It's a yeah, that goal, Mika, the ghost goal, I guess, or I mean, I'm always reminded of Frank Lampard against Germany in the 2010 World Cup, like a banger that's clearly over the line that's just not given. And yeah, the Loudoun the victims this time around, but a dangerous side in their own right, Loudoun.
Yeah, I mean, like Christian said, they've taken a little bit of a dip. They lost 3-1 to Phoenix on the road, and then, of course, lost at the death to Indy 11. Probably should have at least come away with a draw. But before that, in all competitions, they had scored like 12 goals and conceded only 1. 3 straight clean sheets, including very good sides in Birmingham Legion and Oakland Roots, actually. I mean, they're formidable at home. It's where they go on the road that they seem to have struggled a bit. But I mean, the danger man here clearly is Zachary Ryan, who came up through the Red Bulls system. Actually, is from a town called Chatham, New Jersey, which is not too far away from my hometown. But yeah, he's been very good for them. I think something like 5 goals, 2 assists in 6 games. And he's one of the, I mean, I guess you could say like elder statesman in this team at only 24 years old, but like for a Loudoun team that feels ancient. So yeah, he's been very good. And they have a striker from Belgium named Benteke. I just think that's really funny. But Jonathan Benteke, he's got 1 goal. Not that Benteke that you might have been thinking about, but actually, wow. Okay, I'm making a joke, but this kid played for Crystal Palace. He made 1 appearance. Okay.
Are we sure? Does he have a hidden brother? Like, what's happening?
Jonathan Benteke, who is you? Whose man's is this? Yeah, he made 1 appearance for Crystal Palace in 2017, and I think other Benteke would have been there at that time, right?
Probably, yeah.
Anyway, anyway, so yeah, it's gonna be tricky. I think Loudoun will be, like Christian also said, furious with what happens against Indy, and I think they have a match in between. I think they've got an Open Cup date with Columbus Crew in the 4th round. Am I mistaken?
No, that's correct.
Okay, so again, maybe we will capitalize on that, because who did we play that also had a game? I think it was Pittsburgh, right? Mm-hmm. That had played a game.
And more. San
Diego. So, haha. what we've suffered in March and April, everyone else is now starting to suffer the fixture congestion a little bit. So it's a tricky one, but I do think that we can win.
Zach Ryan, you pointed out, I mean, seven goal contributions in 6 games, so he is clearly the guy. But in terms of this travel, I mean, we talk about going cross country is tough. I think like everyone knows like how tired you feel after a day of travel without having to play 90 minutes at the end of that, like probably crashing into a hotel room or whatever, Airbnb. At the end of a long day of travel, you guys, in this case, like, what do we make of, or, how much stock do we put in the fact that Loudoun has to go from the East Coast to El Paso, plus like playing at altitude, playing in the desert, all of the conditions being so different. Do you think Locomotive, I mean, sort of have to like seize on the advantage that they're presented in a matchup like this?
Yeah, the conditions are very similar to what they had to do. But right before they went up against Phoenix, that they had a midweek Open Cup match that week, and then they had to head to a very harsh atmosphere in Phoenix, across the country, temperature and all that. So hopefully we can pull out a similar result there, because looks like they did struggle in that. That was a 3-1 loss for them, with their own, that one being an own goal that Phoenix put in the net for them. So there's good things.
There's something about the pitch at the Swap too that I always back us, because I feel like teams struggle with the conditions overall.
I think Loudon play on like what's closer to a regulation size pitch. So here's hoping that they will continue to boot it out to touch like Pittsburgh did when they came to the swap. But
Yeah.
I thought I was being clever and funny, by the way, but Jonathan Benteke is literally Christian Benteke's little brother. So there you go.
Who is playing in, I didn't know if you already mentioned this, but he's actually playing with DC United right now.
Yes.
So keeping it all in the family there.
I love that they just like follow each other. Well, more often, more likely it's Jonathan trying to follow Christian, of course, but that's funny.
And I guess in terms of things for Locomotive in this match, it seems like, and maybe you guys can help me with this one a little bit, like it seems like defense needs to be the focus, and really getting the way that our backline interacts, like especially in these moments, like maybe set piece defense, but primarily like how we look when the ball goes out wide, defending those areas. Do you think it is just a matter of like with less space we'll probably be able to defend it better, or is there something systemic that Clearhout needs to work out in like keeping those moments from being as dangerous as they were for Colorado?
I think there is something to the comment about less space, because I mean it's just naturally easier to be more compact. Again, like I do worry that a little bit of like complacency may start to set in as this settled 11 gets it in their minds that they're settled in that 11. I think, I mean, I didn't even get to mention that Eder Borelli, like he gets the assists, but other than that, I thought he was pretty poor in Colorado. His passing numbers were abysmal. He just didn't seem as locked in as he usually is. Am I saying drop him? No. I'm just saying that there's room for improvement. Of course, Miles Lyons is having to fill some pretty big shoes, Mark Navarro-sized shoes, doing the best that he can. Maybe the center back partnership is a little bit like, I don't know, again, complacent, I guess. I don't know. I'm glad you brought it up, though, the defense again, because I didn't even get to compliment Eric McHugh for a goal-saving clearance when he comes on at Colorado Springs. And, I mean, he's our Rob Holding, I guess, like coming on and just clearing things, and that's his remit, is get on and make sure we see out the win. So, I don't know, maybe, like, Eric needs to be thought of as a starter at some point. He was massive in that one moment. Obviously, that's different from starting a game and playing 90-plus minutes, but I don't know. Maybe we just need to like shake it up a little bit. But then again, it's not like we're losing. But again, fine margins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Eric McHugh shout is a good one, and I think like that backheeled.
Yeah, like a back heel, like
tackle that he made, or like clearance that he makes, clearance/interception.
Really great, really good, crucial.
Yeah, and tough for someone to pull off. Tough for someone to pull off who's like coming into the game cold. I feel like, but. Yeah, it's a little bit of a strange one because, defensively, Locomotive, I don't think Locomotive would be accused of being bad defensively. But when you compare their goals allowed to teams above them in the table, and the fact that, San Antonio have allowed 7 to Locomotive's 11, Loyal have allowed 8. Sac Republic maybe a little bit of an outlier anomaly. They've only allowed 2 goals in the league. That's just like that's just where they're at right now. They also haven't lost, so it is what it is. But of the question marks around this Locomotive side, it's like we've seen where the goals come from. We've seen where the build-up, like how the build-up works, how it can work differently given the situation. And really the only area of the team that we're left then to scrutinized more is defensively, although I think it's worth acknowledging that it is it is a significant enough improvement on last year to be noticeable. But there are moments where this defense rides its luck a bit versus being maybe more proactive in preventing goals.
Yeah, and this is with Benny, who's been playing pretty out of his mind the last couple matches too. So they're definitely getting bailed out in that sense. So yeah, the defense is certainly what to keep an eye on, because the goals are going to come, especially at home. So it's just a matter of locking down and keeping the back line focused there.
If there's any consolation, I guess, Loudon have not scored a single goal from a set piece. So, yay! It's all open play for them, really. I think they had like one penalty, but yeah, the set piece defending is just like does my head in. But anyway.
The last thought is, with all that being said, do you guys think there's any changes, or do you think Brian is just fully on, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and he's not going to make a change unless he's forced to until this winning streak, or this unbeaten streak, I should say, is over?
I think for the most part it will stay the same. I think maybe Zacharias might make way, I should say, for maybe Josue Aron Gomez, or maybe Manny, because Manny's gotten on the score sheet. Maybe you want to big up a player who's just gotten a massive dose of confidence. But yeah, I mean, as far as like wholesale changes, I think I'd be pretty shocked if that happened.
Yeah.
I have to agree. I can't imagine what the changes would be. Unfortunately, we're still not as deep as I know any of us would like to be, so it's hard to imagine without a specific reason, why there would be any of these changes.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think, like, we've talked about the Gomez change for a little bit now, and yeah, I don't think I don't think Brian will go there unless he's forced at the moment. It just feels like he's going with the hot hands, and which I totally understand. Like, it's fine to ride the momentum and rely on the players who are getting the job done, but yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup. Like we said, Loudon, not at the top of the East by any stretch, but they are, in the playoff spots, which I guess is like not that descriptive, because only 4 teams in the conference won't make the playoffs. But saying that, I think like Loudon are probably comfortably like a lower end playoffs team in the East, and so it'll be a nice litmus test either way, which I guess leads me to the last topic that we'll talk about is the fact that, guys, just like USL in general, West versus East, I mean, I know we have a bias because the team we support is in the West, but is there anything to the idea that the West is just the better of USL's 2 conferences?
I think I've always been of that opinion, that the Western Conference is better. I think there's better managers. I think there's better tacticians, players. I mean, you see a lot of big players moving to the West. So, I mean, but it is different football, to be fair. So I don't know. And I'm biased, but I don't know. I just feel like there's like a more like competitive parity, if you will, in the West. Anyone on their day can beat anyone else, whereas the East is kind of like, it feels a little bit random at times. But also, I don't watch it as much as I watch the West, so maybe that informs my opinion or my perception on it. But West is best. West is clear. Period. Very high level analysis for me, right?
You hit him with the Papa John's, Mika. You're like, better tacticians, better coaches.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, I think I think at the end of the day, like the fact that Orange County and Vegas are kind of our meme teams, and New Mexico is like outside of the playoff picture right now. Like there's a lot of, I just think it's fair to say that like in the West there is a lot of competition, and when you've got two teams with negative goal difference in the top the top four in the East, that is like kind of crazy. Like Tampa and Louisville have been memeing this year and are still like towards the top end of the East. So anyways, make of that what you will. But all that being said, Loudoun heading to the Swap this weekend. It will be an entertaining game, and Seriously Loco will be on hand to cover it. I'm sure you guys are making the trip. I assume that on your behalf. So hopefully that's true. Yeah. All that being said, I think that does bring us to the end. We will. Christian will be there covering the match against Loudoun United next weekend. Keep an eye out for us on your favorite podcast platform, on social media, and follow, like, subscribe, all of those things that you can do on whichever platform you prefer. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/seriouslyloco, and we'll be covering the game this weekend. Excited for this one. I know it's Mother's Day weekend coming up, so shout out to all the moms out there. Hopefully there's some locos giving the gift of attendance to a locomotive match as the Mother's Day gift. But yeah, luckily, I guess it's Saturday night, so it's doesn't infringe on.
Shouldn't infringe on brunch with mom
on Mother's Day activities. Don't go too wild at the game to where you're hungover for brunch with mom. But that being said, everyone, hopefully you guys have a good week, and we'll hopefully be talking to you after a big locomotive win over Loudoun United. But until then, stay loco.